What if I told you that neglecting this one part of your routine as a student could be as bad for your grades as binge drinking, doing drugs, or being in a toxic relationship? Well, that's what happens when you deprive yourself of sleep. In this Student Performance Podcast episode, I'll show you how you can upgrade your sleep schedule to unleash your study superpower to improve your learning, quality of life, and GPA. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Student Performance Podcast, where we dive deep into the science of concepts you never knew had such a big impact on your well-being as a student. My mission is not only to transform your life in the classroom, but help you live a more fulfilled life outside of it as well. All right, everyone. Whenever I work with a student, the first thing that we focus on is their sleep schedule. It is the foundation to your success as a student. If you're always tired, have no energy, you won't be able to study, work out, and be disciplined. We live in a society that tends to glorify the myth that successful people grind and don't sleep until the job is done. Well, I hope to convince you in this episode that getting a good night's rest is not for lazy people, but can help you work smarter, not harder. So let's dive deep into the science of your circadian rhythm, also known as your biological clock. Your circadian rhythm is dictated by a group of nerve cells called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN, in your hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is a structure in your brain that is responsible for connecting your nervous system to your endocrine system. In the morning, when sunlight hits our eyes, it goes through the retinohypothalamic tract to reach our SCN, which triggers our body to wake us up. This causes our adrenal gland to secrete cortisol, which is the stepbrother to adrenaline. This raises our body temperature, heart rate, blood pressure, and stops the release of melatonin, which is our sleep hormone. Then, as we transition into the evening, our SCN picks up low light signatures from the sun as it starts to go down. Our heart rate and body temperature starts to decrease, and our pineal gland starts secreting that melatonin around 8 p.m. Things that can disrupt this melatonin secretion are blue light before you go to bed, ingesting caffeine after 3 p.m., and not hitting that like and subscribe button. So you better do it right now, okay? So there's my shameless plug. So there are 4 stages of sleep that constitutes one sleep cycle, and each sleep cycle is around 90 minutes long. The first 3 stages are known as non-REM sleep, and the final stage is when we are in REM. One of the most important stages of non-REM sleep is the third one, which is when we are in deep sleep. During this stage, the brain emits delta waves, which are long and slow. Muscle tone, pulse, and breathing rate decrease, and it's very hard to wake someone up during this stage. Sleep experts believe that this stage is critical for recovery and growth. Deep sleep has also been shown to restore the immune system and other physiological states. There's evidence that deep sleep contributes to critical thinking, creativity, and memory. After deep sleep, we transition into rapid eye movement, or REM sleep. During REM, brain activity is very similar to when we are awake. Our body goes into atonia, which is the temporary paralysis of your muscles, and even though our eyes are closed, they can be seen rapidly moving, which is how the stage gets its name. Who would have thought, right? You don't enter REM until you've been asleep for around 90 minutes, and we actually get most of our REM sleep during the hours right before we wake up. REM sleep has also been shown to be essential to cognitive functions like memory, learning, and creativity. It's where your most vivid dreams occur. You can technically dream in any of the dream states, but they are less common and intense in the 3 non-REM periods. Also during REM, one of the most important biological processes called synaptic pruning occurs. This is actually when our brain is shrinking. Think of that. I want you to visualize your brain as an electric extension cord with all these different applications connected to it. If there's too many things plugged in, it will become overloaded and can burn out. So during REM, synaptic pruning unplugs the synapses that you are no longer using, in addition to cleaning your brain with cerebral spinal fluid. It's like taking Windex and wiping away all the synaptic cobwebs. This allows your brain to be efficient and learn complex information. It's like taking out the brain trash, throwing away weak synapses to make room for higher quality connections. This helps support more complex neural functions and streamline your neural circuits. This allows your brain to be plastic, which means it's more malleable to form connections. This process right here, guys, is why it's crucial that you get 7 to 8 hours of sleep every single night. And there are some pretty severe consequences if you don't. A study published in 2010 found that freshman students who neglected their sleep had their grades negatively affected more than binge drinking or doing drugs. For upperclassmen, the effect of sleep deprivation was just as bad as being in an abusive relationship. Both of these findings are obviously pretty scary, and the study also found that someone who is routinely well rested has a 0.14 GPA advantage over someone who's perpetually sleepy. And I think everyone out there listening to this would like a 0.14 GPA boost. Am I right? Another study performed this past year looked at the effect that sleep quality had on students making the transition from high school to college. This is obviously a very stressful time in our lives because we get a rude awakening of how much different a college curriculum is than the one we had in high school. The researchers found that average weekly sleep quantity was associated with greater weekly happiness and less anxiety. If a student's sleep schedule was all over the place, which I'm sure a lot of you guys out there can relate to, predicted worse GPA and happiness for students at the end of the semester. So we want to be getting our sleep. Lastly, a paper published a couple years ago in Nature investigated how students' sleep quality affected their final exam score. These researchers found that longer sleep durations during the week before finals exams enhanced students' performance. An interesting finding was that researchers did not find that sleep duration the night before the exam was associated with a better test performance. Rather, sleep duration and quality during the month before finals had the biggest effect. So I guess all-nighters are fine before the tests as long as you are sleeping well throughout the semester. I'm just kidding. If possible, please don't pull an all-nighter. It's really not necessary. Now, I want to dive deep into one of my favorite subjects, naps. Should we do them? How should we do them? And how often should we do them? If you can believe it, humans were never designed to sleep for just one period during the night. Our neurochemistry and hormones shows that we were designed to be biphasic sleepers, meaning we were supposed to sleep for a longer period during the night where we get most of our sleep, followed by a mid-afternoon nap. During naps, your right brain and left brain communicate back and forth in addition to the synaptic pruning we just spoke about. It has also been shown that we're more prone for creative breakthroughs, memory retention, and acquisition of new skills when we wake up from a small nap. Something you should consider, though, is the duration of your nap. Ideally, you want to nap for 20 minutes or less so you can be alert right afterwards, or take a 90-minute nap so you complete one full sleep cycle. The reason for this is that you don't want to wake up in a minute of a 90-minute sleep cycle, as it can make you feel groggy when you wake up. This can vary from person to person, but personally, I do feel a little bit sluggish after I wake up from a 45-minute nap. Now let's talk about some surprising experimental data on napping. First was a study by Harvard researchers that found that people who did not take regular naps were at a 37% increased risk of heart disease compared to chronic nappers. This is pretty mind-blowing, if I don't say so myself, and gives evidence to that we're biphasic sleepers. Another study investigated how napping could improve our memory. Researchers from Singapore gave 90 participants 30 minutes to try to memorize a list of digits. Next, 1/3 of the group was told to take a nap, another third of the group was told to take a break, and the last third were told to continue studying and cram for the exam. When the participants were tested afterward, the napping group and cramming group showed significant better learning than the group that just took a break. However, when the groups were tested a week later on what they learned, the napping group outperformed the cramming group, even though they technically didn't spend as much time studying. Again, pretty incredible, and shows the power of napping on long-term learning. Another study showed that taking a nap helps clear out information from your working memory, which is the brain's temporary storage area, to get ready for new information to be absorbed. Researchers at UC Berkeley, headed by Dr. Matthew Walker, who wrote this book, Why We Sleep, asked participants to complete a challenging task around 10 a.m. that required them to take in a lot of new information. At noon, half of the volunteers took a nap while the rest stayed awake. The really interesting part of the study is that when participants were tested at 6 p.m., the napping group not only performed better than those who didn't nap, the napping group actually performed better than they had earlier in the morning when they first learned the skill. Dr. Walker compares the results of the study as to having an email inbox in your hippocampus. If you remember from last week's episode, your hippocampus is responsible for your learning and memory. When your inbox gets full, you need to sleep to initiate the clearing out process. Until you do, the mail stays in the inbox and you can't take in any more information. So napping is a powerful tool to increase our learning. All the greats of the past tend to be chronic nappers. When Leonardo da Vinci was painting the Mona Lisa, whose biography I have right here, if you didn't notice, he used to take 20-minute naps every 4 hours. He called this the Uberman cycle. Some new interesting research has found that all of our biological clocks are a little bit different. We all have a certain chronotype. Chrono means time, and our chronotype is actually dependent on our genes and hormone levels. This topic was extensively explored by sleep researcher Dr. Michael Breus, whose book, The Power of When, is right here. I'm going to link the book and chronotype tests in the description so you can find out your own, but as I describe them, I'm sure you'll be able to surmise which one you are. Now, personally, I'm a morning person, and I've always tried to convert every single person I meet to be a morning person because that's when we have the most willpower, but I recently changed my mind just a little bit. Because as I spoke about earlier, your chronotype is genetic and is actually determined by the PER3 gene. If you have a long PER3 gene, you tend to be an early riser. If it's short, you can function on less sleep and tend to be a night owl. So the first chronotype we're going to discuss are lions. They're the early risers. They're the people who you know that get up at 5 a.m. and are ready to go. Their cortisol levels tend to peak very early in the morning, and so does the decline of their melatonin. They don't have any sleep fog when they wake up. They are ready to go and are very productive in the early morning hours. However, as the day goes on, they tend to be tired earlier and their social life begins to suffer. They're the ones who tend to not want to go out because they are tired and rather get a good night's sleep. The next chronotype are bears, which consist of 50% of the population. Bears' sleep pattern follows the sun cycle. They tend to wake up around 7 a.m. when the sun comes up and tend to go to bed at around 11 or 12. They have high sleep drive. They need 8 hours of sleep or they severely feel the effects of sleep deprivation. If you are a bear, you'll wake up with some sleep fog and feel half awake. When you wake up, you need to get out of bed and immediately get your blood pumping. Whether that's doing 50 push-ups or walking a couple times around the block, this will be the windshield wipers for your brain fog and help you wake up faster. Your prime work hours are between 10 a.m. and noon. This is the time when your melatonin is at its lowest and you finally feel ready to tackle your day. Couple this with your first cup of coffee at 10 a.m. and you'll be sure to get in the zone. After this peak productivity time, your energy begins to wane at around 2:30, which is a great time to take a 20-minute power nap so you can be productive for the rest of your day. Next, let's talk about all of you night owls out there, or the Wolf Chronotype. Wolves' melatonin levels don't drop off until noon, which tends to make them tired and cranky until then. We all know those people in our lives who are like this. So wolves really need to optimize their afternoon and just get through the morning as productively as possible. Wolves want to get protein into their system in the morning so they can steady their blood sugar and get as active as soon as possible. This will help, but not totally eliminate their sleep fog. Wolves should use the mid-morning hours to plan how they're going to tackle their afternoon when you start hitting your stride. According to the research, night owls hit their peak alertness and productivity around 3 to 4 p.m. So make sure you make the most of this time. Wolves should try to fall asleep around 12, which I'm sure sounds a little bit crazy to you night owls, but stay tuned for the sleep hygiene part of this episode as I'm going to outline the perfect nighttime routine that will help you out with this. The last chronotype are dolphins, which are also known as insomniacs. Dolphins are very light sleepers. Any little noise wakes them up. This is because their hormones are reversed from the norm. They have elevated cortisol and blood pressure throughout the night, which makes it very difficult for them to get into a deep sleep state. Similar to wolves, dolphins should exercise right when they wake up to get their heart rate moving. Then they should eat a high-protein breakfast and get outside to get sunlight to reset their circadian rhythm. Dolphins tend to be extremely dehydrated since their body is working overtime during the night, so it's important that they drink a large glass of water right when they wake up. Dolphins' melatonin levels don't completely drop until 1 p.m., so we just want to make the most of our mornings, whether that's planning or brainstorming for their most productive hours, which is around 4 to 6 p.m. A couple of ground rules for dolphins is that they shouldn't take naps because they have a hard time falling asleep as it is, and they should not drink caffeine past 1 p.m. Okay? So regardless of your chronotype, here are some guidelines to improve your sleep hygiene and fall asleep more quickly. The biggest advice I can give you is turning off your damn phone. How many of you guys lay in bed for hours scrolling through Instagram or TikTok, and then all of a sudden it's 2 a.m. and you messed up your sleep schedule? Or maybe you're a gamer and just wanted to play one more game, which eventually turned into 10. So a good rule of thumb is that your phone and Xbox, or PS4, needs to be off by 10 p.m. and preferably put in another room so you don't have the urge to check it if you can't fall asleep right away. You also want to have a consistent nighttime routine. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but you do want to follow a similar order of events during the evening so you can prime your body for sleep. That might consist of reading a book, journaling, planning for the next day, and taking a hot shower. Hot showers relax your muscles and decrease your core body temperature, all which make it a whole lot easier to fall asleep. Another good sleep hygiene tip is to only associate your bed with sleep. For some of you guys out there, your bed is an office, a study area, movie theater, and a whole bunch of other things that we won't discuss. But it's really important, especially if you have trouble sleeping, to only lay in bed whenever you're ready to take a nap or fall asleep. If you ever find yourself lying awake at night, get up, go into another room, sit in a chair to read or do some meditation or muscle relaxation exercises. For your sleep environment, it needs to be dark, cold, and quiet. I know some of you don't have access to that environment out of the gate, but getting some eye shutters, earplugs, and a fan can help alleviate a lot of these problems you might run into. So, this sleep hygiene subject segues nicely into our first question from our viewers. Again, if you want to be featured on an episode, follow us on Instagram at Student Performance Pod to ask a question as I put up a Instagram story every single week. So the first comes from Mohammed from India, and he asked, how do I get myself to go to bed earlier? And this is the most common question I get. Students want to wake up earlier so they have a nice quiet time to study and work. And I know all of you out there listening to this probably should be going to sleep a couple hours earlier than you do right now. So I just went over a bunch of helpful tips, but the truth is changing your circadian rhythm is difficult. If you've been going to bed at 2 a.m. for years and now all of a sudden you snap your fingers and you want to go to bed at 10, that's not going to happen overnight. Literally. Like that pun? You're going to have to suffer through it a little bit. You need to start going to bed earlier and waking up earlier for about 3 weeks straight for it to become a habit. Do not sleep in on weekends because that will blow up all of your progress you made during the week. Set a time you want to wake up each morning and stick to it. Right when you wake up, get outside to get sunlight so you can reset your circadian rhythm and get your blood pumping so you aren't tempted to go back to sleep. Then, as the sun is setting, go outside so it can trigger your pineal gland to start secreting melatonin. Let people in your life know that you are starting to go to bed earlier so they don't contact or bother you late at night. The next question comes from Tanja from Macedonia, and she asks, can I be effective without a good sleep schedule? What if I work night shifts and have to stay up late? Does this affect my performance and lowers my chances of having a good routine and being disciplined? Wow, what a great question. I'm going to answer this in two parts. The first is yes. Having night shifts is like having a constant fight with the way your body is wired. It's not great for your health or productivity, but here are some tips that can help. Naps are going to be crucial for you. You need to concentrate on being biphasic, as we talked about earlier in the podcast. So let's say your first sleep phase is from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. Right after you wake up, you should eat, hydrate, and get some exercise so your body is fully awake. Then I would try to get straight to studying after that. At around 4 to 5 p.m., I would suggest taking a 90-minute nap and then try to get some work after that. But to be honest, all these tips is like putting a band-aid on the larger issue at hand, which is finding a way to change your schedule so you don't have to work nights or find a different job. I know this might sound a little insensitive, but hear me out. There's so many times I work with students that they're sabotaging themselves because they think the job they have is the only one out there. It makes sense. They're supporting themselves through school, which is extremely admirable, and they are reliant on that money to survive. But as I can say without a doubt, there are probably just as good of jobs, if not better, that have you working during the daytime. Don't quit your job right away. That's not what I'm saying at all. But you need to start looking for a new one. And once you have it, then quit your night shift. These jobs are out there, I promise. You just have to look for them. Okay, everyone. This concludes the second episode of the Student Performance Podcast. If you have any questions about your personal sleep routine, comment them down below if you're watching on YouTube, or send me a DM on Instagram at Student Performance Pod. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review as it really helps the podcast grow. This is our second episode, so we're a baby. So anything you could do to share this to a friend would really, really help me out. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your day, sleep tight, and I'll see you in the next one.